Number one, we already know this case was handled differently from any other case that the FBI agents could remember. Now, part of that is that you're dealing with a presidential candidate, and we want to make sure that that was the only reason that it was done differently. There was an exoneration memo drafted in May of 2016 that, as a former prosecutor, I just found stunning. I find stunning that a law enforcement officer would draft it 2 months before you have interviewed the target of the investigation and before you've interviewed almost 24 witnesses. So we need to know what role, if any, Special Agent Rybecki had in that. We need to know whether or not there was also a prosecution memo. We've seen the non-prosecution memo. Was there a memo laying out the case if they had decided to prosecute, and if not, why not?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because their argument is that it's normal to write up preliminary documents for either side of the equation. But as you point out, we've never heard if they did that in the same way for an argument that there was a prosecution in the works.
Well, I can tell you, having done it for 16 years, it is very usual for the prosecutor to write a prosecution memo. It is not usual at all for the FBI agent to write either a prosecution memo or a non-prosecution memo, but that begs another difference. The head of the FBI made the charging decision in that famous July 5th press conference. That's unprecedented. He also wrote 2 letters in the fall of 2016 that lots of Democrats thought were inappropriate to send. So there are lots of questions we have for the FBI, and Chairman Goodlatte on Judiciary and I are kind of teaming up to take a look at those decisions in 2016.
All right. To what happened today, Corey Lewandowski was in there, former advisor to President Trump, was the original campaign manager. The word tonight is that it got into territory that he didn't feel prepared to answer questions about. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, that's more on his lawyer than it is on the witness. The witness at all times today, Corey represented that he wanted to answer all of our questions, but his lawyer did not believe questions after Corey left the campaign were going to be asked. So, you know, that's on the lawyer. It's not on the witness. Corey is going to come back and answer every question that anyone has. Today we just focus, as you said, he was the campaign manager. He was there from the very beginning. So all of my questions are about collusion, coordination, conspiracy. What evidence of any of that did he see? He's an important witness. It is not his fault that his lawyer didn't prep him to answer all the questions today. So this isn't like Steve Bannon yesterday. Corey's coming back, and he's going to finish the job.
Just to put a bow on the Corey Lewandowski part of this story, he has said all along that there was absolutely no collusion, that he has nothing to hide. Was there anything in today's testimony that changed that?
Nothing. There is no evidence of collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians, between the Trump campaign and the Russians, even between, frankly, between hangers-on and wannabes on the campaign. Now, we're not through interviewing witnesses, but the only person who says that he has seen evidence of collusion is Adam Schiff, and somehow or another he saw it before we even began. Other than that, no one can cite to any evidence of collusion, which is why they're now pivoting, Martha, to the obstruction of justice claim and away from collusion.
Did Adam Schiff find anything to be concerned with Corey Lewandowski today?
Oh, Adam can always find something to be concerned with, even if he has to manufacture it. His biggest problem is that he got out in front of his skis earlier this year, or early last year, and said that he had evidence of collusion that was more than circumstantial, and there ain't none.
In terms of Steve Bannon, the word is that he slipped up early on in the question and answer yesterday and went into the territory after the president was elected, and then saying that he spoke with Reince Priebus and that he spoke with Sean Spicer about the June meeting at Trump Tower, and then pulled back and said, oh, wait, I'm not allowed to talk about anything after the campaign. Is that an accurate depiction?
I would take exception to the phrase slipped up. I think he did exactly what he was supposed to do, which is answer all the questions. Where he really slipped up is when he cited a privilege that doesn't exist. That was the slip up. Initially, when he answered the questions during all relevant time periods, that's what you're supposed to do. It was only when he got this notion that, hey, I'm gonna create a privilege that no one's ever heard of before, that doesn't exist in the law, and I'm gonna kind of compartmentalize what I will and will not answer. That was a slip up to me.
All right, so the characterization of Steve Bannon is that he has flipped, that he's saving everything he knows for his conversation with Robert Mueller, which is now not in front of a grand jury anymore, and that he is, quote, the most dangerous man for the Trump administration. Do you agree with that?
Whether or not he's dangerous, I don't know. I just met him yesterday. I think the only thing dangerous for President Trump or his campaign is credible evidence. This is the same witness that said that there was a 0% chance that the Russian lawyer wasn't walked up to Trump, and when he was asked what that evidence was, he came up with nothing. This is the same witness that said that members of the president's family committed acts of treason. So he's got a credibility issue. If they're hinging the entire case on Steve Bannon's credibility, good luck to the prosecution.
Trey Gowdy, always good to see you. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon speaking with the House Intelligence Committee for a long time yesterday, and he's expected to go back for round 2 tomorrow. Meanwhile, that same panel will talk with Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski today, and South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy, member of that committee, with a lot of questions to ask. Sir, good morning and welcome back to America's Newsroom.
Good morning. Thank you.
I heard you last night say that Steve Bannon was using a tortured version of executive privilege. Well, he was there for 12 hours. So, yeah, I imagine you talked about something.
Well, we spent the first half of the day trying to understand what in the world he was talking about with executive privilege. His version of executive privilege is it covers the transition, it covers the time he was at the White House, and it covers time in memorial. That is no one's definition of executive privilege. So we spent several hours trying to figure out just what the heck he was talking about. And then in the afternoon, we had to dodge around these 3 categories that are apparently off limits. Now, Bill, keep in mind, this is the same person who accused 2 of the president's family members of committing treasonous acts. So, of course, we're going to want to cross-examine him on what he thinks was treasonous. But if everything's off limits, that's a really short conversation.
So I take it you asked him about the treasonous comment and he did not answer it, right?
I tried to. Well, that's the beauty of it. He answered it initially, and then apparently his lawyer didn't like the fact that he answered it. So then he clammed up. That is an eminently reasonable, legitimate question. If you're going to accuse somebody of a crime for which you can be put to death, what is your evidence for that? So I don't know anyone who wouldn't ask that question. He started to answer it, and then his lawyers got involved, and that usually messes up almost everything, and that's why we were there for a long time yesterday, but we're going to have to go back tomorrow.
You sound frustrated. Do I have that right?
I am frustrated whenever people assert privileges that do not exist. And I am really frustrated when witnesses have all the time in the world to talk to the media on and off the record, and they can help people write books, but they can't talk to the representatives that are elected by their fellow citizens. I mean, picture that. He's happy to tell an author about treasonous, unpatriotic acts, but he won't tell members of Congress when he's pressed on it. I'm not aware of any privilege that lets you pick and choose who you answer questions for.
I understand the point you're making, and any reason to expect there's a difference tomorrow. Now, did you settle any ground rules late yesterday that would indicate that would be different on Thursday?
Bill, there's one thing that can fix it, which is the White House instructs Steve Bannon, we're not asserting executive privilege. We are telling you to answer all of the questions that Congress has. That could fix it in a nanosecond.
Yeah.
If the White House would say, answer their questions, Steve.
Have you found evidence of collusion?
No, sir. But we're not through yet. And some of my colleagues have already made up their minds, namely Adam Schiff. He found collusion before we even started. So I'm not sure how you do that, but he did it. I have seen no evidence of collusion between the president and the Russians, the president's campaign and the Russians, but we still have more interviews to do.
Okay, 2 more questions here. Corey Lewandowski appears today. Do you expect him to have the same posture as Steve Bannon?
I hope not. I hope not. It would be, all we're doing is delaying. I mean, keep in mind, the president and some of his supporters want Congress to hurry up and conclude these investigations. So do I. The best way to do that is to instruct witnesses to answer our questions instead of going through this charade of executive privilege.
Jim Rybecki appears tomorrow. Who is he, and why is he important?
He's a high-level FBI official who served under Jim Comey and currently serves, and we are looking at all the decisions the Department of Justice and the FBI made in 2016, and he's an integral part of that. I mean, keep in mind, Bill, this time last year, the Democrats wanted Jim Comey prosecuted for a Hatch Act violation. They now want him canonized or on Mount Rushmore, but this time last year, they wanted him prosecuted. So Republicans and Democrats have questions about decisions made by the Department of Justice in 2016. It's just the Democrats have stopped asking their questions and we have not.
Was Rebecca part of reporting or drafting the letter that exonerated Hillary Clinton? Was
He's
he part of
copied
that?
on it. He's copied on it, and the only way to know whether or not he played a meaningful role in drafting it is to interview him, which is what we're going to do tomorrow. But he was certainly copied on the drafts, so we need to know, did you participate in the editing, and is there also a prosecution version of that memo? We've seen the exoneration version. Two months before they concluded the investigation. Is there also a separate memo where you lay out the theory upon which she could be prosecuted? Because if there's not, and I don't think there is, then you made up your mind 2 months before you even interviewed the target of the investigation, which is really hard to believe.
Trey Gowdy, thank you for your time. Get back to work there in Washington,
Yes,
okay?
sir.
You're welcome.